Fire was everywhere. Houses were burning, children were screaming, and through the smoke a man was running, not to save his possessions, but to save people. His name was Dwight Moody, a preacher who had spent years caring for the poor and teaching children about Jesus. But that night in 1871, everything he had built was gone. The mission, the school, the little church, all turned to ashes. He stood in the middle of the ruins, his face covered in soot, his heart trembling. For a moment he could only whisper, "Lord, what do you want from me now?" No one knew it then, but that night would mark the beginning of something far greater. Out of those ashes would rise a fire that would touch 2 nations and awaken millions. Before we go on, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story stirs something inside you, don't let it fade. Subscribe and walk with us through the stories of men and women who let God use them completely. Because the same God who moved through Dwight Moody still calls hearts today. Dwight Moody was born in 1837 in the small town of Northfield, Massachusetts. He was the 6th of 9 children. When he was just 4 years old, his father, a bricklayer and an alcoholic, died suddenly, leaving his mother, Betsy, with debt, an empty house, and too many mouths to feed. Life was hard. The children worked early, often hungry, often barefoot. But Betsy had something stronger than despair: faith. Every night she would gather her children around the fire and say, "Children, we don't have much, but we have the Lord, and He is enough." Dwight never forgot those words. He grew up determined to change his life. He wanted success, comfort, a chance. At 17, he packed a small suitcase and left for Boston. He found work at his uncle's shoe store, but under one condition. "You can work here," his uncle said, "if you go to church every Sunday." Dwight agreed, not out of faith, but out of need. At church, one man noticed the restless young clerk. His name was Edward Kimball, a quiet Sunday school teacher with a heart full of compassion. He could see that Moody listened but didn't understand. So one day, Kimball decided to go find him. He walked into the shoe store, praying silently with every step. "Lord, give me the right words." He found Dwight in the back, stacking boxes. The smell of leather filled the room. Kimball walked up, placed a trembling hand on his shoulder and said, "Dwight, Jesus loves you. He died for you, and He wants your heart." That was it. No sermon, no argument, just truth, simple and alive. Moody later said, "There, between shelves of shoes, I gave my heart to Christ, and I've never been the same." From that moment, something inside him changed. He started reading the Bible at night, slowly, with effort, but with hunger. He went to church, not by obligation anymore, but out of love. Yet he still wondered, what can a man like me do for God? Soon after, he moved to Chicago, a city exploding with opportunity and with need. There he saw children running in the streets, barefoot, dirty and forgotten. Something broke inside him. If they won't come to church, he thought, then the church must go to them. He rented a small room, gathered a few chairs, and began inviting the kids. He told Bible stories, sang songs, and gave them bread. Some came for food, others for curiosity, but week after week they kept coming. What began as a few children became dozens, then hundreds, and soon adults started showing up too. People from every background came to see this uneducated young man preaching about a loving God. He didn't speak with polish or elegance. He spoke with fire, with heart. One lady once said, "Mr. Moody, your grammar is terrible." He smiled and replied, "I'm using all the grammar I've got for Jesus." But not everyone admired him. Some pastors mocked him. "This man can't even speak properly," they said. "How can he preach the gospel?" Moody listened in silence. At times, the criticism hurt. One night after another harsh remark, he sat alone in the empty hall, wooden floor, flickering lamp, and whispered a prayer. "Lord, I have no education, no eloquence, but if you can use me, then use me. That night, nothing spectacular happened. No lights, no voices, but something shifted. In the weeks that followed, more people came. Children waited at the door before he arrived. Parents joined. The neighborhood began to change. Laughter, songs, and hope filled the air where once there was despair. His mission grew. He left his job to dedicate himself fully to the ministry. He visited homes, shared meals, and spoke to anyone who would listen. He began to see what true ministry looked like. Not power, but presence. And through it all, God was preparing him. Every smile of a child, every tear of a mother, every late-night prayer, they were shaping a man who would one day shake nations. But Moody didn't know that yet. He just knew he was tired but fulfilled. And in those humble streets of Chicago, it looked like the best days of his life had begun. Yet, above the city, the sky was changing. The air felt dry, the winds restless. Soon, a storm was coming, a storm that would burn everything he had built and test everything he believed. The year was 1871. Chicago was booming, and so was Dwight Moody's ministry. What had started with a handful of children had become a movement. Families packed his little mission every week. People were coming to Christ. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, Moody felt something missing. He worked day and night, preaching, organizing, building. And yet, when the crowd went home and the lights were out, he sometimes sat in silence wondering, is this all there is? Where is the power the Bible talks about? One day, 2 older women in his congregation approached him after a service. "Mr. Moody," they said gently, "we're praying that God will fill you with the power of the Holy Spirit." He smiled politely. He didn't quite understand what they meant. He already saw results, conversions, growth, excitement. Why would he need more? But their words stayed with him. Then came the night that changed everything. It began with a small spark, a fire that broke out in a barn on DeKoven Street. The wind caught it, and within hours, flames tore through the city like a living creature. Chicago became an inferno. The air itself seemed to burn. Moody tried to help, guiding families to safety, carrying children in his arms. But the fire was unstoppable. By morning, the city lay in ruins. Everything he had built, his church, his home, his mission, was gone. Nothing but ashes. He stood in the street, smoke rising all around him. Tears streaked through the soot on his face. He whispered the only prayer he could find, "Lord, everything's gone." That night, he didn't preach, he didn't plan, he just walked among the ruins, a man stripped of everything except his faith. For weeks, he struggled in silence. He questioned his calling. Had he failed? Was this God's way of saying stop? But slowly the questions turned into hunger. A new prayer began to rise inside him. "God, I don't want to preach unless you go with me. I don't want words. I want power." Months later, while visiting New York City to raise support for rebuilding the mission, that prayer was answered. It didn't happen in a church or a meeting. It happened on a street. Moody was walking through the busy crowd when suddenly he felt the presence of God in a way he had never known before. It was overwhelming, like love too great for the human heart. He later wrote, "The love of God was poured into me so powerfully that I had to ask him to stay his hand. I could not bear it. There were no visions, no thunder, just the quiet invasion of heaven into a man's soul." When he finally returned to Chicago, people noticed immediately. The same sermons, the same words, but something was different. When he spoke, hearts broke. When he prayed, tears fell. The Spirit of God filled the room. A friend asked him, "Moody, what happened to you?" He answered simply, "Before, I was preaching and the words fell to the ground. Now they seem to take wing." He rebuilt his mission with humble beginnings again. No fine buildings, no fancy plans. But this time, heaven was with him. Crowds grew larger than ever. Not because of his name, but because of the presence people felt when he preached. Men came out of curiosity and left on their knees. Women found peace. Children listened with wide eyes and tears on their cheeks. The fire that had destroyed Chicago had burned away his pride. Now only surrender remained. One evening, reflecting on it all, he said words that would echo through history. The world has yet to see what God can do with a man fully surrendered to him. Then, after a long pause, he whispered to himself, "By God's grace, I will be that man." From that moment, everything changed. He no longer dreamed small. He no longer measured success by numbers or applause. His heart beat for the nations. He felt called beyond America, across the ocean to the cities of Europe, to people who didn't know his name, who spoke with accents he could barely understand. He didn't have a plan. He just had a yes. And as he prepared to leave, he looked one last time at the streets of Chicago, the city that had burned his past and birthed his calling. He thought of the children, the ruins, the pain. Then he smiled faintly and said, "Lord, if you could bring beauty from ashes once, you can do it again." The next chapter of his life would prove just that, because the same fire that once destroyed a city was about to set the world ablaze, not with smoke or flames, but with the light of the gospel. It was 1873. Dwight Moody's heart burned with a new kind of fire. The flames of Chicago had destroyed his mission, but had also refined his soul. Now he felt God calling him to something greater, something that would cross oceans. To most people, it sounded ridiculous. An uneducated preacher from America heading to England, the land of scholars, theologians, and refined pulpits. But Moody wasn't chasing approval. He was following a whisper. He packed a few bags, his Bible, and invited a man named Ira Sankey, a gifted singer with a humble spirit. Together they boarded a ship to England with no money, no reputation, and no plan but to obey. When they arrived, no one was waiting. The first meetings were small, quiet, almost disappointing. Some pastors watched with suspicion. "This American speaks too simply," they said. "He sings children's songs. The people here will never take him seriously." Moody didn't argue. He just prayed, "Lord, if you're with me, one broken heart is enough to begin." Then something started to happen. People came out of curiosity but left in tears. Hard men wept. Young people stayed behind to pray. The room felt different. A stillness filled it, the kind that made you whisper without knowing why. Sankey's voice floated through the air, gentle and pure. His songs weren't performances, they were prayers. And when Moody stood up to speak, the words were plain, but they pierced like light through glass. In a matter of weeks, churches overflowed. Crowds filled streets and halls. Meetings spilled into arenas and public parks. London, Edinburgh, Belfast, Glasgow. One by one, the cities caught flame. Newspapers couldn't explain it. They wrote, "A strange movement is spreading. Churches are full. Lives are changing. There is no human explanation." For 2 years, the revival swept across Britain. Historians estimate that more than 2.5 million people heard Moody and Sankey, but statistics were never the story. The real story was the quiet miracle happening in hearts. Moody once stood before 20,000 people in London. The air was thick with expectation. He opened his Bible and said softly, "There's no power in me, but there is power in God, and He is here." The crowd fell silent. Some sobbed openly. Others simply bowed their heads. It felt like heaven had leaned close. That night, hundreds came to faith. But Moody didn't stay on stage to enjoy the applause. He slipped behind the platform, knelt, and wept. "Lord, never let me steal your glory." The revival didn't end when the music stopped. It spread like fire through cities and across borders. Pastors rediscovered prayer, families reconciled, churches once cold were filled with warmth again. Everywhere he went, people asked the same question: "What's the secret of your power?" Moody always answered the same way: "There is no secret, just surrender." He often warned, if the Holy Spirit were to leave the church today, 90% of what we do would go on just the same, and nobody would notice. "I don't want to live that way. I want to depend on Him every step." One night, after a meeting, a young man approached him. "Mr. Moody, I want God to use me like He uses you." Moody looked at him with calm eyes and said, "Then give Him everything, not half, everything." Those words would echo through generations. When the revival finally quieted, newspapers called it the greatest spiritual awakening since John Wesley. But Moody didn't see himself as great. He saw himself as small, just a vessel. And that, perhaps, was the secret all along. Returning to America, his ministry exploded. Cities filled stadiums and theaters to hear him preach. In New York, Philadelphia, and Boston, thousands stood outside just to catch his voice through open windows. There were no microphones, no marketing, just hunger. The power that once shook England now swept through America. The same sermons, the same simple words, but spoken through a man who had been with God. People felt it. They said you could sense the presence of heaven before he even started speaking. And through it all, Moody remained unchanged. He still mispronounced words. He still spoke too fast, but now every flaw became part of the message that God chooses the ordinary to do the extraordinary. The world began to listen, not to the voice of a man, but to the voice of surrender. In every city, Moody repeated the same line: "The world has yet to see what God can do through a man fully surrendered to Him." Then he would pause, let the silence breathe, and add quietly, "Maybe the next one is you." People didn't forget those words. They stayed in the air like a holy dare. That sentence became his heartbeat, his mission, and his invitation to a generation. It wasn't about him. It was about the God who could use anyone willing to burn with holy fire. When Dwight Moody returned from England, he was no longer the same man. The shoe salesman had become a living flame. Wherever he went, hearts softened, cities changed. People sensed something in him, something not of this world. But Moody never sought fame. He lived simply, spoke plainly, and stayed humble. He wore the same old clothes. He never wanted to look like a celebrity, only a servant. He used to say, "True greatness isn't standing tall before men. It's walking close with God." At home, his wife Emma was his quiet strength. She prayed for him, steadied him, and reminded him who the power belonged to. "Dwight," she would say, "it's not your work, it's His. Rest in Him." They had 3 children, and even in his busiest seasons, Moody cherished family moments, prayers at the dinner table, laughter, and long evenings by the fire. As the years went on, one thought began to grow in his heart. The revival he had seen couldn't end with him. The fire had to keep burning. So he began to dream, not of crowds, but of disciples. A place where ordinary men and women could learn God's word and carry that same flame to the ends of the earth. In 1886, that dream became real. He founded the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. Its mission was simple and clear: to train workers for the harvest, preachers, missionaries, teachers, not for titles, but for souls. "I don't want scholars locked in ivory towers," he said. "I want servants with their feet in the dust and their eyes on heaven." The institute grew quickly. Students came from across America and beyond. After graduation, they scattered to the world, to Africa, Asia, South America, carrying the same message that had changed their teacher: Christ is enough. Moody also started orphanages, schools, and conferences that brought churches together. He believed unity was the soil where revival could grow. He didn't preach to divide. He preached to awaken. Still, he never saw himself as special. Once, a reporter asked, "Mr. Moody, do you think you're the greatest evangelist of our time?" He smiled and said, "I'm just a man trying to obey." As the years passed, his health began to fail, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. Even when he was too weak to stand, he'd sit on a chair and preach. He used to say, "As long as God gives me breath, I'll speak of his love." By 1899, his heart was giving out. He knew his time was short. But even from his bed, he spoke with peace. He told his family, "Don't weep for me. The earth is fading. Heaven is opening. God is calling me home." On the morning of December 22nd, 1899, Dwight Moody took his final breath. He died as he had lived, surrendered, steady, full of faith. The world lost a preacher, but heaven gained a worshipper. The boy who once sold shoes had lit fires that still burn more than a century later. His legacy isn't measured in books or buildings. It's written in lives changed, in the quiet strength of students who still study at his institute, in the missionaries who carry his message across continents, and in every heart that believes God still uses ordinary people. The Moody Bible Institute remains active today. Thousands study there, and many say there's something different about that place, as if the same spirit that filled Dwight Moody still walks its halls. His words still echo. The world has yet to see what God can do through a man fully surrendered to him. Now that same sentence reaches us. What could God do through you? What might happen if your heart were fully his? You may never preach to crowds, never cross oceans, never build a school, but maybe the next great revival will start in your home, in your room, in your quiet prayers when no one's watching. God isn't looking for talent. He's looking for surrender. The same spirit who filled Moody is still moving today, still searching for hearts willing to burn again. So pause for a moment, close your eyes. Remember the fire that once roared through Chicago, crossed the ocean, and touched the world. That fire hasn't died. It's waiting for a new altar, and that altar could be your heart. Maybe the world hasn't yet seen what God will do through you, but he has, and he's waiting for your yes. It's not about fame or numbers or noise. It's about love, about a heart that whispers, "Lord, here I am. Use me, set me ablaze again."